I was at the Anglia Ruskin University student hustings this week. One of the big issues that really came up there was housing and the costs of housing for students. So how can, given that a number of Anglia students live in the Western Central area as well as in my part of town, how can councillors work with the student union to ensure developers are engaging with the students and the students' unions at design stage so that they are influencing designs of new halls of residence that are not aimed at the language schools and students with big pockets or families to back them up so that they are affordable to students at Anglia Ruskin? Thank you.
Are you talking about rent or?
Rent, specifically.
Does anybody have a view on that? No?
Sorry.
Councillor Reid.
I mean, I suggest that I think it's terrific if the students want to get involved in these issues. I mean, and I would suggest that they talk to the planning department in the first instance, and implications, and try to understand the slightly cumbersome, the local planning policy structure, and then about how student accommodation comes forward.
Another one.
Yeah.
I think I'm correct in saying that the local plan now gives way to student housing over and above social housing in some developments in the city centre. So there are I'm correct in saying that, aren't I? I mean, there's one over what used to be Brunswick School, and what was supposed to be the social housing element is completely given over to student housing. So I think there are certainly policies in place to support student housing in the city. Sorry, Colin?
Specific to that I think that was the case in the last local plan, but that is not the case in the new local plan, which is pending approval. I'm not quite sure how it relates to the question, though. That's not.
Yeah. Sorry.
Kate Honeycutt, just in response to Councillor Reid. I think the students, I'm not sure they have either the time or the knowledge to involve the planning committee.
Exactly.
And also, I mean, with student housing, often it costs more, rent costs more than maintenance loan. So it's already a huge amount of the stuff they're to pay already. So I'm sort of feeling that maybe it's not very fair to leave it down to the students, and the students are already very worked already.
That's not true.
Sorry, I missed the question.
Sorry, were we Councillor what's the next one?
I'm Councillor Reid.
Councillor Reid, yeah, I was just saying it's not very fair to leave it down to the students to get involved in the campaign.
I'm sorry, I thought I had understood the question to be about what could the students themselves do.
No, this is what can the council and specifically councillors do to ensure that the students are engaging in the planning system, bearing in mind that most students may not even know what the council actually does, let alone who their local councillor is. So the idea that they would know which committee to get in touch with and how to lobby that committee to the extent that it influences them. Exactly.
Did you tell them about the West Central Area Committee meeting, which they can come to in vast numbers?
Because I'm not a student there anymore, I wasn't eligible to speak.
Can I make a tangible suggestion? That we make sure that we follow this up by trying to make sure that the formal consultation processes of the council do specifically include consulting with various student unions about student housing policies. So that, because I completely agree with you that asking students to find out which committee in other words is very cumbersome. But but I think it might be useful if the student unions themselves, they may well be now, but we're actually part of the consultation process at the stage where these really important policy issues are developed. And I think anybody would be very happy to come and talk to the students about the process and just how it works and what opportunities are and where they might, together with us, use to develop.
I think what might be quite good for students is just to be able to find out a little bit more information before they arrive. I mean, I don't know about the Anglia Ruskin scheme, but the Cambridge scheme, it's often in particular disparities between the college rates. They can come, there are all these kind of costs related to living in Cambridge, and they might know nothing about it, and then find that it's actually unaffordable to live here. And it's really difficult.
Now, I think that Anglia Ruskin and Cambridge University situations are often quite different, and far more Anglia Ruskin students are going to be faced with looking for accommodation on the open market. But one of the things that the previous ruling group on the council used to do was that members of the executive used to have meetings with the Students' Union of Anglia Ruskin and of Cambridge University. And one of the thoughts would be to suggest that if that doesn't happen, and that doesn't happen.
There are fairly regular meetings with the student unions at the moment. One of the problems right at the moment, of course, is not only I don't know, you probably have to notice there's an election coming up. Really? Yeah, I know. But the other thing that's happening is there's actually elections going on, certainly with the Anglia Ruskin Student Union, for their own presidencies and all the rest of it. Sorry? Yeah, so obviously everything's up in the air, and given that, it'll be a while before that settles down and any kind of real regularity. I actually think it's a very, very good suggestion that you have, and I'll take it to our housing people and see what we can do in terms of getting even pre-planning advice to developers, saying if you're going to be pitching developments specifically for students, and you don't have a way of tying in a particular university or college to that, then if you actually want to make it desirable for students, which has been one of the issues, that they're building stuff that students don't want to afford to live in, then you actually might want to be going and talking to the student unions in the first place before you do that development, which I think is what you're suggesting, Anthony, isn't it? Because, you know, I agree, I do some statement of interest. I teach Anglia Ruskin as well as studying there. And a huge proportion of my students, a gobstacking proportion, commute into lectures. They commute because they can't afford to live it. There's people who are commuting in from places like London and Harlow and Luton, and it's detrimental to student study, let alone trying to have any engagement with the wider culture of the university.
I'm not sure if Anglia Ruskin is the owner of the student accommodation on CV1, but they're certainly the instigator of the development, and a large proportion of those studio rooms are just unoccupied. They're simply unaffordable. Now, if the university is prompting the city into building more and more student accommodation and isn't letting them know that what the rents are, then, whose responsibility is that?
Good point.
I think this is like another question, it's like the police commissioning. I mean, everything's falling on the councillors, but there are already avenues of communication available if people will only use them. And the first thing is that Anglia should talk honestly to its own potential students.
Yes, good point.
I think the onus is in a way on the university, not the council on this one, because you have a classic opportunity to do an Anglia Ruskin sponsored piece of research that could go national. It could be very good for the university's image. And it would look at what students actually want in terms of at least what they would put up with on the cost versus space equation. There was an interesting program, I think it was 6 months or so ago, where the fellow from Terry Luckin, who has tried to model student accommodation based on sort of travel lodge style rooms, very streamlined, very clean, very easy to clean, very small, with built-in showers, etc., etc. He took that to the council here and was told to go over because it didn't fulfil the minimum space requirement for a student. I think do you work at the university?
No, I'm just a cameraman.
You're just a cameraman. Well, I would say that if Anglia Ruskin could lead on this, they could do themselves a big favour.
Anyway, I think possibly we can move on from here. Councillor O'Reilly needs to leave, but she's going to pass back to her colleagues the suggestion that they in a meeting with the student union, discuss something like this. So thank you for raising that.